Emma tightened her grip on the flashlight, its beam trembling along with her hands. She had been hired to babysit a 6-year-old boy named Liam, but now, standing in the dimly lit hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. It started with the baby monitor. At first, it was just static, a faint crackling sound that could easily be dismissed as interference. But then came the whispers. Low, guttural murmurs drifted from the speaker, too distorted to make out words, but unmistakably human. Emma froze, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. It wasn't Liam's voice, it was deeper, darker, and filled with an unsettling urgency. She glanced toward the nursery door, where soft yellow light spilled into the hallway. Everything seemed normal. Enough, the house was quiet except for the occasional creak of old floorboards settling. Yet, the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and every instinct screamed at her to leave. But how could she? She was responsible for Liam. Taking a shaky breath, Emma forced herself to move forward. Her footsteps were cautious, almost hesitant, as if each step might awaken some unseen predator lurking in the shadows. As she approached the nursery, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't coming from the baby monitor anymore. They were everywhere, in the walls, beneath the floorboards, inside her own head. When she finally pushed open the door, her stomach dropped. The crib was empty. Emma's mind raced. Where was Liam? Had he woken up and wandered off? Or worse, had someone taken him? Her eyes scanned the room frantically. Toys lay scattered across the carpet, their cheerful colors clashing with the oppressive atmosphere. A stuffed bear sat propped against the wall, its button eyes glinting unnaturally in the dim light. Something about it felt off, like it was watching her. "Liam?" she called softly, her voice barely above a whisper. No response. She stepped further into the room, her flashlight casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. That's when she noticed it, the faint trail of muddy footprints leading out of the nursery. They were small, child-sized, but there was something unnatural about them. The mud glistened wakely, even though it hadn't rained in days. Emma followed the trail, her pulse quickening with every step. It led her down the hallway, past closed doors that loomed like silent sentinels. She hesitated before one particular door, the basement entrance. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness spilling out onto the hardwood floor. Her rational mind told her not to go down there. Basements were always creepy, especially in old houses like this one. But curiosity and duty overrode her fear. If Liam was down there, she had to find him. As she descended the creaky stairs, the air grew colder. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the house itself didn't want her to proceed. The flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied again. When she reached the bottom, she froze. In the center of the basement stood a rocking chair, moving slowly back and forth, despite no visible force propelling it. On the seat lay a crumpled piece of paper. Hesitantly, Emma picked it up and unfolded it. Scribbled in shaky handwriting were 3 chilling words: "Don't trust them." Emma's thoughts spiraled. Who wrote the note? And who were they? Was it referring to the parents who hired her? The neighbors? Or someone or something else entirely? Before she could process what she'd found, a loud thud echoed from upstairs. Dropping the note, she bolted back up the stairs, her legs burning with adrenaline. By the time she reached the top, the noise had stopped. The hallway was deathly silent, save for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock. But the silence didn't last long. From somewhere deep within the house came a high-pitched giggle, the unmistakable sound of a child laughing. It was playful, innocent, and utterly terrifying because she knew Liam wasn't supposed to be awake. Following the laughter, Emma found herself drawn to the living room. The large bay window framed the moonlit backyard, where tree branches swayed gently in the breeze. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. Then she saw a shadow moving behind the curtains. Not the silhouette of a person, but something smaller. Childlike, her breath hitched. "Liam?" she whispered again, stepping closer to the window. The shadow paused, then darted away, disappearing into the night. Without thinking, Emma threw open the front door and ran outside. The cool night air hit her face as she scanned the yard. The garden stretched endlessly, shrouded in darkness. Somewhere far off, she heard another laugh, closer this time, and then she saw him. Standing near the edge of the woods, bathed in pale moonlight, was Liam. His back was to her, his tiny frame silhouetted against the trees. Relief flooded through her, but it was short-lived. Because as she called his name and took a step forward, he turned around. His face was blank, completely devoid of features. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth porcelain skin stretched taut over a hollow skull. Emma stumbled backward, her scream caught in her throat. Before she could react, the figure raised a finger to where its lips should have been and mimicked the universal gesture for silence. Paralyzed with fear, Emma watched as the figure tilted its head, studying her with an unblinking gaze. Then, without warning, it vanished. One moment it was there, and the next it was gone, leaving only the rustling leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Shaking uncontrollably, Emma turned to run back inside, but stopped dead in her tracks. There, etched onto the glass of the front door, were fresh fingerprints smudged in dirt. Tiny, child-sized prints, and they were on the inside of the house. Emma stood frozen in place, staring at the muddy fingerprints on the inside of the front door. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what had just happened. How could Liam or whatever that thing was be outside one moment and inside the next? And why did it feel like the house itself was alive, watching her every move? The sound of footsteps behind her snapped her out of her daze. Whipping around, she saw Mrs. Caldwell, the boy's mother, standing in the doorway leading to the kitchen. She was dressed in a silk robe, her expression calm but unreadable. "Is everything okay?" Mrs. Caldwell asked, her voice smooth and measured. "I heard you scream." Emma hesitated, unsure how much to say. Should she tell her about the shadowy figure in the woods, about the featureless child? Or would Mrs. Caldwell dismiss her as hysterical? Instead, she gestured weakly toward the glass door. There's something wrong," Emma stammered. "Liam, he's not in his bed. I found him outside, but she stopped, unable to put into words the horror she'd witnessed. Mrs. Caldwell frowned, stepping closer. Her bare feet made no sound against the hardwood floor. "Outside? Are you sure?" "Yes," Emma insisted, her voice rising. "He was by the woods. But when I got closer..." She trailed off again, shaking her head. "It wasn't him, not really." Mrs. Caldwell studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Let me check the house," she said, turning away without another word. Emma watched her go, unease prickling at the edges of her thoughts. Something about Mrs. Caldwell's demeanor felt off. Too calm, too detached. Wasn't she worried about her son? As Mrs. Caldwell disappeared upstairs, Emma decided to investigate further. If anyone knew what was going on, it had to be the parents. But as she moved through the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light, sent her nerves spiraling. Her search led her to Mr. Caldwell's study, a small room tucked away near the back of the house. The door was slightly ajar, and faint light spilled out from within. Peering inside, she saw shelves lined with books, a cluttered desk, and an old filing cabinet. On the wall hung a framed photograph of the family, Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell smiling proudly beside their son, Liam. But something about the photo caught Emma's eye. In the background, barely visible, stood a figure partially obscured by shadows. Squinting, she leaned closer. It looked like a woman, but not Mrs. Caldwell. This woman wore a tattered dress, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow. A sudden noise startled her, a soft scrape, like nails dragging across wood. Spinning around, she found herself face to face with Mr. Caldwell. He stood silhouetted in the doorway, his features hidden in shadow. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his tone sharp. I was looking for Liam," Emma stammered, clutching the edge of the desk for support. "I thought maybe he came in here." Mr. Caldwell stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. His movements were deliberate, almost predatory. "You shouldn't snoop around other people's things," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Especially not in this house." Emma swallowed hard, her pulse hammering in her ears. There was something dangerous about him, something far more sinister than mere irritation. And then it hit her. These weren't ordinary parents. They were hiding something. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma returned to the living room and began searching for clues. Beneath the couch cushions, she discovered a torn piece of paper, a receipt dated 10 years ago. Scrawled across the bottom in faded ink were the words, "Payment received for services rendered." Services rendered? What kind of services? Her stomach churned as she realized the implications. Whatever the Caldwells were involved in, it went beyond babysitting. Much deeper and much darker. Her investigation was interrupted by the sound of laughter drifting down the hallway. It was faint but unmistakable, Liam's voice. Heart pounding, she followed the sound to the attic staircase. The laughter grew louder with each step until she reached the top, where she found the source. Liam sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, surrounded by old toys and trinkets. His head tilted upward as if listening to someone only he could hear. When he noticed Emma, his lips curled into a grin so wide it seemed unnatural. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, his voice eerily adult-like. "What do you mean?" Emma asked, taking a cautious step forward. "Where have you been all night?" Liam didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to the far corner of the attic, where a large wooden trunk sat open. Inside were dozens of photographs, all of them featuring different children, none older than 10. Some looked happy, others appeared terrified. But in every picture, the same woman stood nearby, her hollow eyes staring directly at the camera. Emma's blood ran cold. "Who is she?" she breathed. Before Liam could respond, the attic door slammed shut behind her. Darkness enveloped the space, broken only by the faint glow of moonlight streaming through a cracked window. A low, guttural laugh echoed around her, reverberating off the walls. And then came the whisper, "They're lying to you." Panicked, Emma scrambled toward the door, fumbling with the handle. It wouldn't budge. The laughter grew louder, closer, until it seemed to emanate from right beside her ear. She spun around, flashlight trembling in her hand, and saw them. Mrs. Caldwell and Mr. Caldwell stood side by side, their faces twisted into grotesque smiles. Behind them loomed the woman from the photographs, her tattered dress billowing as though caught in an invisible wind. "It's time you learned the truth," Mrs. Caldwell said, her voice dripping with malice. "About us. And about Liam." Before Emma could react, the floor beneath her gave way, plunging her into darkness. Emma landed hard on a cold, damp surface, her flashlight skittering out of her hand and casting wild shadows across the room. Her head throbbed from the impact, but the pain barely registered compared to the terror coursing through her veins. She was no longer in the attic. She had fallen into some kind of basement hidden beneath the house. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and the faint drip of water echoed somewhere in the distance. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she realized she wasn't alone. Shadows moved along the walls, flickering unnaturally as though alive. And then she heard a soft rhythmic tapping sound, like fingers drumming against wood. Her breath hitched when she saw them, rows upon rows of wooden crates stacked haphazardly around the space. Each one bore strange symbols carved into the surface, glowing faintly in the darkness. The tapping seemed to be coming from inside one of the crates. "Hello?" Emma called out, her voice trembling. No response came except for the steady beat of whatever or whoever was trapped within, summoning what little courage she had left. She crawled toward the nearest crate. The closer she got, the louder the tapping became. Finally, reaching out with shaking hands, she touched the lid and immediately recoiled. It was ice cold, colder than anything natural could possibly be. Before she could decide whether to open it, a shrill scream pierced the silence. It wasn't human, it was something else entirely. Something ancient and angry. The scream was followed by footsteps overhead. Heavy, deliberate steps that made the ceiling groan under their weight. Emma pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself invisible, but there was nowhere to hide. The room offered no cover, just the eerie glow of the symbols and the relentless tapping. Suddenly, a section of the ceiling gave way, and Mrs. Caldwell descended into the basement via a ladder. Her expression was calm, almost serene, despite the chaos surrounding her. In her arms, she carried Liam, or rather, the thing pretending to be Liam. His face remained blank, his featureless head tilted slightly to one side as if listening intently. "You shouldn't have come down here," Mrs. Caldwell said softly, her tone devoid of emotion. "This isn't your fight, my fight." Emma stammered, backing away as far as the cramped space would allow. "What are you talking about? What is this place?" Mrs. Caldwell ignored her question and set Liam down gently on the floor. He stood motionless, staring at Emma with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Then, without warning, he began to change. His small frame stretched taller, his limbs elongated, and his smooth, porcelain skin cracked open to reveal blackened veins pulsing beneath. Emma screamed, scrambling backward until her back hit the cold stone wall. "What is he?" she choked out. "He's not a child," Mrs. Caldwell replied simply. "Not anymore." Desperate for answers, Emma blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "Why me? Why did you bring me here?" Mrs. Caldwell sighed, as though explaining something obvious to a child. "You were chosen because you're expendable, because no one will miss you when you're gone." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. She had always known babysitting jobs like this weren't glamorous, but she never imagined they could end like this. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she forced herself to stay focused. If she wanted to survive, she needed to think clearly. A sudden idea struck her. Maybe she could use the crates against them. Whatever was inside those boxes clearly didn't belong here. It might even be powerful enough to stop whatever the Caldwells were planning, gathering every ounce of bravery she possessed. Emma lunged for the nearest crate and pried open the lid. Inside, she found something both horrifying and mesmerizing. A swirling mass of dark energy, writhing and pulsing like a living thing. Before she could react, it shot out of the box and enveloped her, filling her mind with visions of fire, death, and destruction. When the energy finally dissipated, Emma collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. But something had changed. She felt stronger, more aware, like she had tapped into a power beyond comprehension. Mrs. Caldwell's calm demeanor faltered for the first time. "No," she whispered, taking a step back. "That wasn't supposed to happen." Despite the newfound strength coursing through her veins, Emma couldn't hold back the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Fear, anger, grief, they all collided in a storm of raw, unfiltered humanity. She thought of her own family, her friends, everyone who would never know what happened to her if she failed tonight. "I won't let you win," she spat, her voice shaking but determined. "Whatever sick game you're playing ends now." For the first time, Mr. Caldwell appeared beside his wife, his face twisted into a snarl. "You don't understand," he growled. "This isn't about winning or losing. This is survival. For us and for him." He gestured toward Liam, who now towered over them, his monstrous form fully revealed. His once childlike body had transformed into a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and shadow, his empty face replaced by a gaping maw. Filled with razor-sharp teeth, Emma clenched her fists, channeling the energy she'd absorbed from the crate. She didn't know how to control it, but she didn't need to. All she needed was rage. Pure, unbridled rage. With a primal scream, she unleashed the energy, sending a shockwave rippling through the basement. The crates exploded one by one, releasing torrents of dark energy that clashed violently with Liam's form. The boy monster roared in agony, its shape shifting uncontrollably as the forces battled for dominance. Just as Emma thought she might actually stand a chance, the ground beneath her feet began to crack. The entire basement started collapsing, chunks of stone and wood raining down around her. Through the chaos, she saw Mrs. Caldwell grab Liam and vanish into a portal of swirling darkness. "No!" Emma shouted, lunging forward, but it was too late. The portal closed, leaving her alone amidst the ruins. As the dust settled, she noticed something clutched in her hand, a shard of glass etched with the same symbols from the crates. And then faintly, she heard a voice whisper, "They'll be back." The shard of glass in Emma's hand pulsed faintly, its etched symbols glowing with an otherworldly light. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she surveyed the wreckage of the basement around her. The collapse had left her battered and bruised, but the adrenaline coursing through her veins kept her moving. That whisper still echoed in her mind. They'll be back. But when? And how? She didn't have time to process it. Every instinct screamed at her to get out of the house. Yet, as she climbed the remnants of the ladder leading upward, something stopped her. A sudden realization struck like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't over. Not even close. The Caldwells knew something she didn't, and whatever it was, it tied directly to Liam, the boy monster, and the crates filled with dark energy. If she wanted to survive and stop them, she needed answers. And those answers were hidden somewhere in this cursed house. With renewed determination, Emma steadied herself and began searching the ruins for clues. Her search led her back to Mr. Caldwell's study, now partially destroyed from the collapse. Papers were scattered across the floor, furniture overturned, and the air smelled faintly of smoke. Amidst the chaos, one item remained untouched, the photograph of the family on the wall. This time, Emma examined it more closely. The woman in the background, the gaunt figure with hollow eyes, wasn't just standing near the Caldwells. She was holding Liam, but not gently. Her skeletal fingers dug into his shoulders, pulling him toward her as though claiming ownership. Emma flipped the frame over and found a handwritten note taped to the back. The debt must be paid. Protect the vessel at all costs. A chill ran down her spine. Vessel? What did that mean? Was Liam some kind of container? For what? Before she could ponder further, the room grew colder. Frost crept along the edges of the windows, and the faint sound of humming filled the air, a tune both familiar and haunting. It was the same melody she'd hummed earlier. While tucking Liam into bed, the humming grew louder, accompanied by soft footsteps approaching from behind. Emma turned slowly, her heart pounding. Standing in the doorway was the woman from the photograph. Her tattered dress swayed as if caught in an invisible breeze, and her hollow eyes bore into Emma's soul. "You shouldn't interfere," the woman rasped, her voice layered with echoes. "He belongs to me." "Who are you?" Emma demanded, clutching the shard of glass tightly. "And what do you want with Liam?" The woman tilted her head, a grotesque smile stretching across her face. "I am Maris, and he is my key to freedom." Maris stepped closer, each movement deliberate and unnerving. Emma backed away until her spine pressed against the desk. Desperation clawed at her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What does that mean?" she asked. "Why does Liam matter so much?" Maris laughed, a sound like nails scraping against metal. "Liam is special. Born under a blood moon, marked by darkness. His body is the only thing strong enough to contain the spirit of the Forgotten One. Without him, I cannot complete the ritual. The Forgotten One? Emma repeated, her mind racing. The name sent shivers down her spine, conjuring images of unspeakable horrors. Yes, Maris hissed, her form flickering like static. An ancient entity sealed away centuries ago. My master. The Caldwells promised me their son in exchange for power, but they betrayed me. They tried to destroy him, to break the connection. Now I will take what is mine. Emma's stomach churned, so the Caldwells hadn't been protecting Liam. They'd been trying to save themselves. Betrayal upon betrayal, it was almost too much to comprehend. But why me? Emma whispered, her voice breaking. Why drag me into this? Maris smirked. Because you've seen too much. Because you carry a piece of the Forgotten One within you now. You are part of the cycle, whether you like it or not. Fury surged through Emma, overriding her fear. She refused to let this nightmare continue. Raising the shard of glass, she shouted, "If you think I'm letting you use me, or anyone else, you're wrong." Maris lunged forward, her form dissolving into tendrils of shadow. The room plunged into darkness, and Emma felt icy hands grasp at her limbs. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but then she remembered the energy she'd absorbed earlier. Closing her eyes, she focused on the shard, channeling every ounce of rage and pain into it. The symbols erupted in blinding light, forcing Maris to retreat with an ear-splitting shriek. The shadows recoiled, retreating into the corners of the room. For the first time, Emma saw fear in Maris's hollow eyes. "You don't understand," Maris snarled. "You can't stop destiny. I can try." Emma roared, thrusting the shard outward. The light intensified, engulfing the room in a searing brilliance. Maris screamed again, her form unraveling like smoke in the wind. When the light finally faded, the room was silent. Maris was gone, but so was the shard. Its power had burned itself out, leaving Emma drained and trembling. As Emma sank to the floor, exhausted, a faint buzzing noise filled the air. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then it grew louder, closer. Turning her head, she saw the baby monitor lying amidst the debris. Its screen flickered to life, displaying static-filled footage of the woods outside. And there, standing among the trees, was Liam, except this time his face wasn't blank. He stared directly at the camera, his expression eerily calm. Then, he raised a single finger to his lips. Behind him, another figure emerged from the shadows, Mrs. Caldwell. Emma's blood ran cold. They weren't done with her yet. Emma stared at the baby monitor, her heart pounding as Liam's calm but chilling expression burned into her mind. Behind him, Mrs. Caldwell stood motionless, her face unreadable in the dim light of the woods. The buzzing noise grew louder, almost deafening, before abruptly cutting off. The screen went black. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and echoing from somewhere outside the house. Emma's breath hitched. They were coming for her. She scrambled to her feet, her body protesting every movement after the night's horrors. Her thoughts raced. She couldn't fight them alone, not again. But she also knew there was no escape. Not unless she faced them head-on. Clutching the remnants of courage within her, Emma grabbed a nearby chair and smashed it against the window. Glass shattered everywhere, cold air rushing in as she climbed out onto the front lawn. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the property. And there, just beyond the tree line, stood Liam and Mrs. Caldwell, watching her with unnerving patience. "Why won't you leave me alone?" Emma screamed, her voice raw with desperation. Mrs. Caldwell stepped forward, her silk robe billowing softly in the breeze. "Because you've become part of this," she said, her tone eerily calm. "You can't undo what's been done." Emma backed away, her eyes darting between Mrs. Caldwell and Liam. Both figures radiated an aura of menace, though Liam's presence felt different. Less monstrous, more human. As if some fragment of his true self still lingered beneath the surface. "You think I'm scared of you?" Emma spat, trying to mask her fear with defiance. "You're nothing but cowards using the child as a pawn." Mrs. Caldwell's lips curled into a cruel smile. "A pawn? No, a savior. Without him, none of us would survive." "Survive what?" Emma demanded. "Your twisted game? Your greed? Whatever that thing is inside him, it doesn't belong here." Mrs. Caldwell hesitated, her composure faltering for the first time. For a brief second, Emma saw guilt flicker in her eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "It's too late for regrets," Mrs. Caldwell murmured. "The ritual must be completed." Before Emma could respond, Liam moved. Faster than she thought possible, he lunged toward her, his small hands reaching out like claws. Instinctively, she sidestepped, grabbing a shard of broken glass from the ground. When he came at her again, she slashed wildly, catching him across the arm. He recoiled with a pained cry, not the roar of a monster, but the whimper of a frightened child. That single sound broke something inside Emma. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the truth. Liam wasn't evil. He was a victim, just like her, maybe even more so. "I'm sorry," she whispered, lowering the shard. "I don't want to hurt you." Liam froze, his wide eyes locking onto hers. For a fleeting moment, she saw recognition, a spark of humanity buried deep within the darkness. Then Mrs. Caldwell intervened, pulling him back with surprising force. "Enough," she snapped, her voice sharp with anger. "You've interfered for the last time." As Mrs. Caldwell began chanting in a language Emma didn't understand, the air around them grew heavy. Shadows coiled and writhed, forming shapes that defied logic. It was happening, the ritual. The Forgotten One was awakening. Emma knew she had only seconds to act. Summoning every ounce of strength, she ran toward Mrs. Caldwell, tackling her to the ground. The chant faltered and the shadows wavered, their forms dissolving momentarily. "Stop!" Mrs. Caldwell shrieked, struggling to push Emma off. "You'll kill us all." "No," Emma growled through gritted teeth. "You already did that." With one final shove, she knocked Mrs. Caldwell unconscious. Turning her attention to Liam, she found him standing frozen, his body trembling as the dark energy surged around him. His eyes pleaded with her silently. "Help me." "I will," she promised, stepping closer. "But you have to trust me." Liam's small hand reached out toward hers, but before they could touch, the ground beneath them began to crack. Deep fissures spread outward, releasing a putrid stench of decay. From the cracks emerged tendrils of black smoke, writhing like living serpents. They coiled around Liam, pulling him backward into the abyss. "No!" Emma screamed, lunging forward. She grabbed hold of Liam's arm, refusing to let go despite the searing pain that shot through her hands. As the smoke burned her skin, it felt like fire and ice at the same time, a sensation so unbearable that tears streamed down her face. "You can't save him." Maris's voice echoed from the shadows, her form materializing once more. Her hollow eyes gleamed with malice. "He is bound to my master. This is his fate." Emma clenched her jaw, her resolve hardening. "I won't let you take him." Summoning the last remnants of energy from the shard of glass, Emma focused every ounce of her willpower into a single desperate act. She drove the shard into the ground, embedding it deep into the earth. The symbols flared with blinding light, creating a barrier between Liam and the encroaching darkness. The smoke recoiled, hissing like steam, as the ritual was disrupted. Maris screamed in fury, her form dissolving into nothingness. The house shook violently, walls cracking and furniture tumbling as the curse unraveled. When the chaos subsided, Emma found herself kneeling on the ground, Liam cradled in her arms. His face was pale but peaceful, his features restored to that of a normal child. He blinked up at her, confusion clouding his eyes. "Emma?" he whispered, his voice soft and innocent. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she hugged him tightly. "You're safe now," she murmured. "It's over." But as she looked around at the wreckage of the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered. The shard of glass lay embedded in the ground, its light dimmed but not extinguished. A faint whisper echoed in the wind. "Until next time." The end.